share some of the stories from some of your national acts versus tribute acts, that kind of thing?
Oh gosh, there's so many. I think one of the highlights of my whole life was at 10 years old, I wanted to see Fats Domino. And my mother and I were living in Oregon, and of course that was a different period of time. And I said, Mom, I want to see Fats. And rock and roll was hitting, and she said, well, he's playing at an all-adult club. And I said, well, I know, Mom, but you used to own this building, and you could get me in. She says, all right. So I went to meet Fats, and Fats said, do you play piano? And I said, sure. He said, could you play Blueberry Hill? And I'm walking, and I said, sure. So I sat down with Fats. He was just coming off of a break, and he introduced me to the crowd. Now, in that day and age, you just didn't find a 10-year-old boy on stage with a person of color. It was not happening. I watched two ladies in the background keel right over. They were in the back of the room, and they just fainted dead away.
Wow.
The police were called. My mother and I are removed from the club. Many years later, she says, nobody's going to speak to us in this town for 6 months, but you got to meet Fats. Years later, I went backstage to meet Fats, and I said, you remember this little boy that played piano with you about 10 years ago? He said, yeah. I said, I'm that little boy all growing up.
Wow.
And I got to book Fats on a number of shows, and
really
became, dear friends with him. But just, I don't think my knees stopped shaking for a week after that that thing on stage. It wasn't the police that bothered me. It was just being on stage with Fats Domino.
Sure. I mean, that's such an incredible, honor.
Yeah, it was. And a sweet guy. And most of these guys, especially from the Golden Age, were really dear people, dedicated to their music. A lot of them never got paid for it, which was a shame, but great folks.
Huh. You think about that today, you hear about the huge dollars that are involved in the entertainment industry, and then, as Brian has said, some incredible names that he's talking about. It was happened because it was a passion of theirs. So, can you tell us a couple more stories? Is there any other famous acts that you really connect to?
Oh gosh, had wonderful times with Little Richard on the shows over the years, Jerry Lee Lewis, wow. Just so many of the great stars of the Golden Age. And today we've got, I've got probably a dozen tribute acts that I handle, plus the 4 preps that did 26 miles to Santa Catalina. The Kingsmen that did Louie Louie, they were a little house band up the road from me when I was a teenage disc jockey, and they were teenagers coming down the road handing me acetates of something called Louie Louie and wow. And some songs, and we're still working with the Kingsmen today, and still several original members.
So tell us, who are you featuring today in the acts that you're
well, we got the 4 preps and Surf and Safari, the Beach Boys tribute. We've got a Rolling Stones tribute.
Really?
Rod Stewart tribute. The guy he looks like Rod, and he's incredible.
Wow.
Got a Roy Orbison tribute that is absolutely unbelievable, because it's tough to get that 4-octave range that Roy had. Plus, he looks like Roy, and he's just like Roy was off stage. Roy was a very shy, sweet individual. Huh. Got a Fleetwood Mac tribute.
Really?
Santana,
wow.
ABBA, Beatles, Creedence Clearwater Revival, and just took on a Doors tribute. So
no kidding.
That's just a flock of the tributes. Plus, I'll still book all national acts here and there. There's a couple I won't book anymore because they're just problems.
Yeah, I can imagine.
For the most part, there's still some great folks from the Golden Age that are out there, and again, it's all trying to keep the quality out there. And if they haven't got the chops, maybe it's time to stay home or retire. But I look for people that have really good quality shows that we can price right and sell.
Well, this has been really an education, and it's so interesting, all of the groups that you've worked with. So I guess it's party at Brian's house, because you can always enjoy the entertainment.
2 years ago, we set the the Guinness World Record for the most people twisting, and it was on the 50th anniversary of the twist with Chubby Checker.
Really? Oh, wow.
I had booked Chubby, and who I've worked with many, many times, but the show just happened to fall on the exact day 50 years ago that he cut the twist, and we set the Guinness World Record for the most people twisting. So there have been a lot of fun things like that that still happen.
That's incredible. Absolutely incredible. You know, we've been just chatting, and after the show, where Brian was telling us about his incredible career, he shared some stories. And there's so many and so good. You've got to hear this. And so I'm going to turn this over to Brian. Mr. Rock and Roll, Brian Beirne, is going to share some key things. And entrepreneurs, I want you to take a lesson and really listen to what he has to say. It's an incredible experience.
I think a lot of people today, a lot of young people, don't really want to work at getting a job, don't have the tenacity that we did in prior years. And I think a lot of that has been lost in our country, which hopefully will turn around. When I was a kid, and of course I had done a little bit of radio, but not too much, because my mother said I would get in trouble with girls at the radio station since I was 13. But a few years later, my stepfather and I, we didn't get along, and he said, "You don't have a job right now." And I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, I'll have a job by day's end." I had 20 bucks to my name, and I said, "I'll bet you the 20 bucks that I have, that's all I got, that I have a job by day's end." I drove my car down to the end of the hill and realized, well, now I put myself in a position. I certainly didn't want to lose the 20 bucks and wanted a job. So I flipped a coin. I said, well, heads I'll go to the right, tails I'll go to the radio station to the left. Drove down about 20 miles, listened to the radio station, and drove up, asked for the general manager, and I said, "I'm better than the guy that you got on the air." He says, "Get out of here, kid. This guy's been here for 8 years." I said, "No. Tell you what, let me make a tape for you. If you like the tape, you hire me. That's the deal. If you don't like the tape, you can throw me out." He said, "Okay." So I made the audition tape, and I figured, well, worst case scenario, if I get thrown out, I've got an audition tape to go down the road to the next radio station with, since I didn't really have any audition tapes at that point in my career. So he listened to the tape, and he said, "You're right, kid. You are better than the guy on the air. You'll start tomorrow." So I had a job and got another 20 bucks too out of my stepfather, which was a good deal. But you know, it was all tenacity. I wanted that job, and by golly, I was going to get a job by day's end.
There you go. You know, thanks, Brian, so much.
Thank you,
that kind of story, we could sit here for hours, except for he's got to go because he's doing some great things. But you know, what he talked about, and I'll keep it short, is persistence. That power of persistence, you know, is one of the top characteristics of the most successful people. So I hope that you spend time and listen to what Brian has to say and focus on your persistence, because really anything can happen. Thanks again, and thanks, Brian.
Only more. You can do it.
You bet. You bet. If you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you're right.